Hello, everyone. It's amazing to see you all. As people are coming in, if people can actually come and fill in the front, there's people that are coming a little bit late, and we don't want them to be disrupting and being able to find, they'll fill in towards the back as they come. So all these lovely people walking down the center, if you can fill in, that would be wonderful. Thank you. So welcome, everyone. My name is Stacy Rutland. I'm founder of Income Movement. It's been amazing to see so many familiar faces that have only been in a little square screen for the last many years that we've worked together. I want to do a little bit of logistics and housekeeping so that everybody has some basic information about things, and then we're going to move right into our programming for the day. So this is the 21st annual Big Conference, and we are officially live right now, beaming out into the world via live stream. So hello, everybody that isn't able to be here in Chicago today. We have a pretty full house. We have over 300 people who will be here in person over the course of the 2 days, and it looks like we have at least 200 here, 220 right now, based on quick counts. From a logistics side of things, there's 4 rooms in this space. 3 of them are going to have programming, and 1 is actually a space for people to be able to take meetings if have a little bit more of an intimate kind of lunch conversation with people, or if you just want to break away with somebody and be able to talk longer. Upstairs, we have a solarium, and there'll be signs posted all over of how to get there. Our main programming rooms are this room, and then we have a gallery room, Gallery 1 and Gallery 2. There's a schedule up at the entrance of this room, and you can see what programming is happening in which room. It's all fairly straightforward, but there's a whole lot of us here that can help guide you if you're not sure how to get to Gallery 2, because you have to kind of do a little sneak through Gallery 1 to get there. We know that a lot of folks here are going to need Wi-Fi, so I'm going to give everybody the Wi-Fi information now. The Wi-Fi is Moonlight. The password is Moonlight and the number 1, all lowercase. If you don't have to be connected, it would be nice if you're not, just because we know that we might kind of break the Wi-Fi if there's 300 people that are using it that are on. But we also want to thank the sponsors, which we have up here. These sponsors are what make this event possible every year. The majority of our funding comes from sponsors and from all of you community members who kick in to help support by buying tickets. So thank you to you and everybody here, and thank you to our sponsors. So we have Fund for Humanity, Give Card, Aid Kit, Steady, Inherent Good, the producers and directors of Inherent Good, and Creatives Rebuild New York and Springboard for the Arts. So let's give them all a big thank you. All right, so we're going to move right into our first part of the programming, which is actually a great honor and a lot of excitement to have the president of Cook County Board, Toni Preckwinkle. She's the 35th president of the Cook County Board of Commissioners. She's held this office since 2010. She's the first Black woman to be elected in office. And just a little bit of setting context for you all so you can imagine the task that she has at hand every day. The economic footprint of the Chicago region is larger than most of the nations in the world. As the top executive in Cook County, the nation's second most populous county in our country, President Preckwinkle oversees one of the nation's largest public health and hospital systems and one of the largest criminal justice systems in the nation. Promoting equity, specifically racial equity, has been a central principle of President Preckwinkle's leadership. In November 2018, the Office of the President released the Cook County Policy Roadmap, a 5-year strategic plan for offices under the President to guide her administrative policy work, is specifically in this equity space. Supporting this roadmap and under the Cook County's Vital Communities pillar sits the Cook County Promise Guaranteed Income Pilot. You're going to learn even more about it, which is very exciting. This pilot provides unconditional cash of $500 a month to 3,250 low to moderate income families in Cook County. Over 2 years. So to speak about this and her long-term vision for moving from pilot to permanency, please join me in giving President Preckwinkle a warm welcome.
Thank you. Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for that kind introduction, Stacey. It's an honor to be here today to welcome you all to the 21st Annual Basic Income Guarantee Conference, the nation's only annual convening of stakeholders fighting for a guaranteed income. I want to thank Stacey and the movement leaders in the room today for the invitation to attend. I'm grateful to all of you for joining us here in Chicago and Cook County. Over the next 2 days, all of you will share lessons learned, collaborate, and strategize around difficult but necessary work to build an income floor for all. As a history teacher, I'd like to begin with a little history. By the way, I haven't been a history teacher for 40 years, but once a history teacher, always a history teacher. We all know that the idea of a guaranteed income has been gaining support in recent years. But this movement has a long history in the fight for racial and economic justice. In 1967, Dr. Martin Luther King called for a guaranteed income as the simplest and most effective solution to poverty. He noted that among its myriad benefits included a host of positive psychological changes that will inevitably result from widespread economic security. Dr. King understood the transcendent power of a guaranteed income, not only to uplift a person's financial state, but to uplift spirits and plans for the future. Guaranteed income was also included in the Black Panthers platform. We want land, that's right. We want land, bread, housing, education, clothing, justice, peace, and people's community control of modern technology. And the federal government is responsible and obligated to everyone to give them employment or a guaranteed income. In Chicago, we know a little bit about what it takes to make history. From demonstrations in Haymarket Square demanding an 8-hour workday, to the great engineering feat of reversing the course of the Chicago River, to Jane Addams' transformative work to create settlement houses for low-income and immigrant residents, it's no surprise that Chicagoland is also leading the way on guaranteed income, something I'm very proud of. Today, Chicagoland is home to several direct cash programs: the Chicago Resilient Communities Pilot, the Chicago Future Fund, the Evanston Guaranteed Income Pilot, and of course, Cook County's Promise Pilot, the nation's largest publicly funded program at $42 million, and the only program committed to permanency. We're committed to this work because we understand our history. In Cook County, we recognize that government has been responsible for the oppression, frankly, of people of color and immigrants over the course of our history, from slavery to the Chinese Exclusion Act, to the internment of the Japanese during World War II, to redlining. Our black and brown and immigrant communities have time and time again endured government-sponsored oppression. The truth is that these injustices have made it more difficult for black and brown Americans to achieve financial freedom today. No matter how you look at it, in terms of household wealth, home ownership, access to credit, available data shows that our black and brown citizens start their lives with less money and face more barriers to building wealth in the long term. This is a direct consequence of the policies and actions of government throughout our history. And as government leaders, we have a special obligation to right these historical wrongs. That's why I say that the Promise Pilot is rooted in our history and experience of structural racism. It's rooted in our understanding of the structures that prevent economic inclusion and impose unconscionable levels of income inequality in the United States. It's rooted in our recognition that low-income people do not lack a work ethic or good sense, they lack cash. But just as importantly, the Promise pilot is also rooted in strong evidence that direct cash benefits are spent wisely and support economic mobility. These programs are effective at improving an entire family's financial, educational, physical, and social outcomes. It's a shining example of good governance with its focus on high-impact, accessible public benefits paired with low administrative costs that save taxpayer dollars. Now, let me address our more recent history. How do we come to embrace a guaranteed income in Cook County? I think our story is instructive and clearly shows why government needs to be moving in this direction. When COVID-19 struck in early 2020, governments were pushed to their limits all across the country. Within the span of just a few months, the United States was experiencing its highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression in the 1930s, while also being in the midst of a global pandemic, the first time in 100 years. And while both of these events impacted everyone, their impacts did not affect everyone equally. We saw that low-income communities of color experienced the worst health and economic impacts. We believed then, and we believe now, that those disparities were unacceptable, so we moved to act. We launched dozens of new COVID-related initiatives. This included small business grants, support to local food pantries, housing assistance, and many more, all aimed at assisting our most impacted residents first and foremost. As part of this effort, we decided to create a small emergency cash program to offer one-time $600 direct cash payments to low and moderate income suburban residents who had lost their jobs or work due to the pandemic. While decades of research have shown the merits of direct cash programs, we wanted to be careful with our COVID response dollars and cautiously waded into this new territory after significant deliberation and a thorough review of the evidence. Being among the first local governments to implement such a program, we initially allocated $2 million, which was enough to serve around 3,300 people. It's critical to note that from the very beginning, we noticed two key differences between cash assistance and the other response programs that we initiated. First, the cost to administer emergency cash was significantly less than our other initiatives. And secondly, it was much easier to launch and administer. While some of our initiatives took 6 months or more to build, the emergency cash program was up and running in about 6 weeks. When the application opened, the response was unlike anything we'd ever experienced. Within a handful of days, tens of thousands of people applied for the 3,300 spots. With this information in hand, we knew that we needed to do more. At that moment, we decided to quadruple the size of the fund to more than $8 million. In the end, our emergency cash program served 14,000 residents. More than 75% of those recipients were people of color, 70% were female, and the median household income was $20,000. As a final note, our data pointed to the fact that most of the money was used to cover housing, food, transportation, and medical bills, all contrary to the welfare queen tropes that have long plagued our nation's safety net narratives. Cook County's experience with the Emergency Cash Fund showed us that there's a better way to address economic hardship, by directly giving cash to those who need it. After this experience, I started speaking out more as a supporter of direct cash initiatives aimed at low and moderate income residents. In 2022, Cook County announced it would create the Promise Pilot, Guaranteed Income Pilot. The $42 million program provides $500 monthly payments to 3,250 Cook County families which have incomes less than 250% of the federal poverty level. Payments will last for 2 years. When we launched the Promise Pilot in October of 2022, more than 230,000 people applied. Just as with our 2020 cash assistance program, the Promise Pilot targeted communities most in need, low and moderate income families. 70% of Promise participants are women, 70% are people of color, 15% are living with a disability, and our participants are twice as likely to have children as the average resident. In addition, over half of the participants are working. The median annual income is just $21,000, however. The program is now in its seventh month of payments, and we're grateful to our program administrators and partners. Give Directly, Aid Kit, and Working Credit, I want to thank you very much for your good work. We're also grateful to our research partners at the University of Chicago who have been following our pilot every step of the way. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our own staff, particularly Pete Subkowiak, who's been working so hard on this initiative. Well, we won't have research results. Okay, thank you. While we won't have research results for some time, we've already been hearing about the significant impact that the Promise pilot is having on our residents' lives. Just last month, I met a participant named Bella, along with her baby, Felix. In the fall of 2022, Bella and her husband were worried sick over finances as she considered returning to work after giving birth to Felix. While the couple both had full-time jobs, they had no way to cover both the mortgage and child care for their baby. I remember those days, which cost thousands of dollars per month. With a guaranteed income, Bella has been able to cut her work down to part-time so she can stay home and raise Felix while still covering her share of the mortgage. When asked how the program impacted her family, she simply said, "Having that security is life-changing." Another surprising bonus of the program has been the positive, steadying impact it's had on her marriage. Bella says, "It's made our relationship a lot more secure as a couple, allowed more stability while Felix is young." Bella is currently finishing up her master's degree and looking forward to going back to full-time work after graduation. In the meantime, she and her husband are focused on their budget, and they hope to move to a slightly bigger home in a few years to accommodate Felix and perhaps a younger brother or sister. Bella's story is one of more than 3,000 stories of stability, growth, and mobility happening in Cook County through our pilot. And I'm excited to let you know that you can read more about Bella and other Promise participants by reading our new report, The Impact of a Promise, released today at www.engagecookcounty.com/promise. Thanks to Economic Security Project for their support in helping our participants learn how to share their stories. And by the way, that storytelling is extremely important, I think, in building support for programs like this. I'm inspired by the transformative power of the guaranteed income and the growing national movement behind it. Throughout this conference, I hope you will all reflect on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King, who envisioned a country where every individual, regardless of background, could thrive. The fight for a guaranteed income is deeply rooted in our history. It's a response to the structural oppression that has stifled the financial health of Black and brown Americans, a responsibility that we as government leaders must address. Cook County's journey towards embracing a guaranteed income has been based on both evidence and compassion. Through our pilot, we witnessed firsthand the positive impact of direct cash on the lives of our residents. We have seen how these programs can be swiftly implemented with low administrative costs and reaching those most in need. Stories like Bella's remind us that the guaranteed income enables individuals to pursue a brighter future for themselves and their families. There's perhaps nothing more powerful a government can do for its people, for its economy, for its society, than to afford the same opportunity to all its residents. As we continue to evaluate and learn from our efforts, we remain committed to this work. We recognize that economic hardship cannot be overcome by an underfunded social safety net with paternalistic restrictions, nor by temporary pilot programs. Instead, it demands the respect, trust, and knowledge that we all have the ability to make wise decisions for ourselves and our families. We should encourage government on every level to ensure that economic stability and opportunity are not distant dreams, but a tangible reality for every person in our nation. Thank you.
All right. Let's give President Preckwinkle another round of applause for all the amazing work. So a lot of people actually during that speech were arriving, and so we're going to give people a moment to just come and fill in, because there's actually a lot of seats towards the front. If you don't have a seat and you'd like to, we have another set of programming to have happen, and we're going to actually move this podium out of the way because we don't need it anymore. Yeah, sure. And maybe somebody, yeah. We're just going to slide it right over there. We could probably keep it for this. Slide. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Away with the podium. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Mara.
Woo! We're here.
We're here in Chicago.
How many meetings have we had? 20, 1,100, several minutes, lots of hours.
Many.
All leading to this day. Hi, everyone. Welcome again. Lots of welcomes this morning. We got to be welcoming and welcome everybody. Mara Cuffey-Peterson here, and I'm proud to represent Creatives Rebuild New York.
Woohoo!
Hey, yes, a statewide guaranteed income program for 2,400 artists all across the state. Did you know artists live everywhere? They really do. Did you know there's a lot of artists here? Are you an artist here? Help me out. Yes, I thought so. Welcome. We want to just set the context, set the tone. We're going to have some fun. I'm going to be your MC. That's also my initials, very cute. I think Stacy had that in mind. So you'll hear my voice a few times throughout the day just to give you little friendly reminders of where you're supposed to be, how we're gonna be kind to one another and grow our understanding and grow this movement. So Stacy, you kick us off. Hala, kick us off. I got it.
I got it.
I was like,
Program is flowing. We're here. We're ready. I have had no coffee this morning, but I am trying to wean off, so we're good. Very energized. I'm Hala Ahmed. I've served on the Programming and Strategic Advisory Committee for the Basic Income Guarantee Conference, and I'm so excited to welcome everyone to the 21st Annual Basic Income Guarantee Conference, the big conference, which every time I've told people about it, they're like, what do you mean, the big conference? I've never heard of it. But it is a big
one,
deal,
you know.
and it is, in fact, the big conference. I'm the Vice President for Policy at the Jane Family Institute, which, as many of you know, is a research and policy organization that moves ideas from theory to practice. And one of those ideas that we've been dedicated to for years is guaranteed income. Whether it's Stockton Basic Income Pilot or a policy program in Maricá, Brazil, where we're reaching 42,000 residents of a city there and doing research on that program. We've spent the last several years building research analysis of cash policy on all sorts of variations, including the child tax credit and other cash policies that have come up in recent years. And at some point in the past few years, we've been asking ourselves, with all that has happened in guaranteed income and basic income in the past few years, everything that President Preckwinkle and all of you are so familiar with, where do we go from here? Well, my colleague and I wrote a paper about this, so you can just read that. You don't have to do that. But we are at a critical juncture in the guaranteed income and basic income movement, and we need to take stock. There are over 70 guaranteed income pilots active right now in the United States, and there are over 100 cities that are advocating for some form of direct cash transfer in their city. There's my Midwestern accent coming through, cash transfer. And since 2017, depending on the survey, public support for basic income fluctuates around 45%, give or take 10 points. And in 2021, when we saw so many cash transfers going out, 55% of voters said they supported a guaranteed income. And then we saw the largest guaranteed income program this country has ever seen with the child tax credit, the CTC. Woo-hoo. But with all of this progress, yes, lots to celebrate, I ask, who is advocating for guaranteed or basic income? Whose wins are those? And are we a movement? We have been coming to the big conference as researchers for many years. Folks have seen us, and many years in the past, it's been very focused on research outcomes. And I have to say that this year is not like any other year of the big conference. This year represents a concerted focus on transforming a room full of program implementers, researchers, academics, and sometimes advocates, into a movement. This conference will not only focus on recent wins or pilot design and research questions, which are important, it will also help us cultivate a collective vision for moving towards a movement. And this will take a shift towards grassroots organizing, which may mean that some of us may exercise different muscles. As my co-author on this paper that maybe you will read, Saru Jayaraman from One Fair Wage has said, organizing is distinct from advocacy because it is collective action by the people most affected by an issue, often with limited resources, against those with more power and resources. And this was the case with the National Welfare Rights Organization, the example that President Preckwinkle gave, and in the past when women demanded more from public benefits and demanded a basic income. In the movement for fair wages, as another example, for restaurant and service workers, when demands were not set by workers, they got the demands wrong. They took for granted that maybe with tips, you can have a lower minimum wage. But when they spoke to workers and the demands were sourced from workers and checked against their collective vision for the future, that is when One Fair Wage advocates began to make headway as a movement for fair wages. In guaranteed income, we have all the ingredients to make this same transition. At this conference, we hope folks across the community can come together for collective visioning and coalition building. That means we have to talk to each other. And to respond to the call for pilots to move from implementers to organizers and local coordinators of grassroots power building. This conference is a chance to invest in turning the stories and experiences of recipients into a collective story and collective demands built by recipients and intended recipients. And that effort includes everyone in this room. So welcome to the big conference, and I'll hand it to Stacey.
Woo, yes.
So as we were thinking about the opening remarks here and what we wanted to say, I was doing a lot of reading through reports from our community and actually outside of our community as well. And I spent a lot of time reading through and thinking about, kind of meditating on Maurice Mitchell's Building Resilient Organizations. He's the National Director of Working Families Party. If you have not read this, read it. It's pretty amazing. The ideas that are in there, the title of it is Building Resilient Organizations, but it really is really perfect as well for building resilient movements. There's so much really important ideas and information in there. And as I was reading through it, this quote I kept going back to it. Our opponents are formidable and dangerous. And here in the context of our movement, our opponents are the status quo. Our opponents are the systems that are designed to make people feel powerless, hopeless, feel that the way things are now are the way that they're always going to be. These systems are formidable and dangerous, and we know that. We're down on the ground, having conversations, working with, trying to get money to people, researching it. There's recipients here in this room, activists, artists. We all know that these are formidable and dangerous. But if we think about that as kind of an idea for us to come together around, how do we flip that and become formidable and dangerous for the systems? And so I want to speak a little bit to a few pieces and just add on to both what President Preckwinkle as well as Hala started with here. We know that we are at this important inflection point. Specifically, the pandemic pointed out the idea to millions of people, that something that we've all known for many, many years, that our economy is precarious and that anybody can fall into poverty. And if they do, it is not because of their own shortcomings, it's because of the system and the way it's designed and built. Out of the kind of recognition of that idea, what we found is a huge opening of eyes to the idea of direct cash and guaranteed income. And it's really landed on the floor of programs and policy tables for thousands of organizations and electeds across all different levels of government. And we heard it when President Preckwinkle mentioned the direct cash program, which was separate from the pilot. When I'm sure you all have had this experience as well, but as we've done more work with community-based organizations, during the pandemic, almost every community-based organization did informal direct cash. They just realized, oh my gosh, what we're doing is not working and we need to get cash to people as quickly as possible. There was also a lot of funding that allowed that, unrestricted ARPA and CARES dollars to allow people to have kind of the free rein to get the money to people. But we find that, so we have all these wins, 130 pilots, we have mayors for a guaranteed income, now we have counties for a guaranteed income, we have these amazing formal kind of coalitions. But we do need to think about where do we go from here? And ultimately, how do we make sure, because the truth is that a huge fuel kind of driver for the momentum that we've had in this movement for the last 3 or 4 years has been because of the pandemic. It's been because of the dollars and the will of electeds to realize they need to actually start funneling money directly into the hands of people. But we also see that right now, the economic and political response to the pandemic is going away. So how do we collectively here fuel our movement when those things go away? We know that we have to build connective tissue for collaboration and coordination. We know that we have to find permanent funding sources from government budgets to continue to support people and to help build the political will at all levels. We know that we need to build our base, as Hallow just so eloquently said. We need to get people in the streets. We need to make sure that when the next child tax credit moment happens, that there's a political necessity for our electeds to actually pass it, to continue to pass it, and get people to be able to make this part of the most important kind of political decisions that our electeds need to be making in the next years. So I kind of, as I'm thinking about this and what I'm going to be bringing to these few days is that in my mind, this is the beginning of us becoming a formidable and dangerous community of activists and to really challenge our systems. This year's big conference is designed with this in mind. So you'll see through the programming as we go through these amazing 2 days, which are a collective coming together of more than 100 organizations and recipients and activists and artists. We really have been thinking about how can we help start to reimagine what the fuel is for us to be able to continue to build the momentum and not have ourselves kind of flatline as we see the funding and the political will potentially start to dry up. So I'm going to also start to hand it over tomorrow. One of the important pieces that we also recognize as we do this work and our ability to be effective as a movement is supporting folks with lived experience, putting them at the center, as Hallow was speaking to. Also really thinking about each of us in this room as whole humans, and how do we protect and support each other to remain whole humans as we do this work so we don't burn out. And so I'm going to hand it over to Mara to talk a little bit more, take this down into that individual kind of space.
Ooh, yes, Stacy. Are we feeling dangerous? A little bit? That's a good way to begin, I think. A few more things to say. Stacy and Hala dropped a lot of gems. I have just a couple more, hopefully gems. We'll see how it turns out.
They are.
I think we talked about nourishing the grassroots, right? We've talked about dangerous systems. We've talked about people power, who is our base, right? We talked about fueling this movement. And we've also started to talk about how we make this transition from the individual work to the collective work. And so I want to talk about this collective, right? These people in this room, the people on the other side of the live stream. Hello, I'm glad you're here. You could be somewhere else, but you opened your computer to be here, and you don't have to. It's incredible. So good morning, y'all.
Good morning.
We're collective. One more. Good morning. Okay, there we go. People have traveled. How many of y'all traveled on a plane to get here today? Can you look around? Yeah, that's a lot, right? We're traveling from far and wide to be here, and I imagine something connected you, something told you that you wanted to be here today. maybe something about the theme of this conference, building momentum across the movement. What is a movement? What do we mean by that? Three people come to mind when I think about what is a movement, what is comprised of a movement. Toni Bambara, Black poet, writer, activist. Yes. Toni Bambara would tell us something about our pace. She would remind us that not all speed is movement. Bayard Rustin would tell us to toss the rule book aside and warmly remind us that a movement is made up of angelic troublemakers. Think on that. Think on that. Grace Lee Boggs, shout out Detroit, yep, would say that movements are born of critical connections rather than critical mass. So it seems to me that a movement is just as much about the people who are moving, right, and the relationship that they have to one another, the people who are moving and the relationships that they have between each other. So I want to try something a little different because we have to get our energy up. We have a long day ahead. We have a little day tomorrow. We're going to do some things. Can you all stomp your feet really loud for me? Can you clap your hands? Can you scream something joyfully? Yes. Okay, so now I have some prompts, okay? Are you ready for me? Will you stomp your feet vigorously if, in some area of your life, you are a healer? Vigorously. And cut.
You're going to be sweating at the end of this activity.
Will you clap your hands joyfully if, in some area of your life, you are a storyteller? Yes. Last but not least, if in some area of your life you have been a visionary or have vision connected to your values, scream and holler something beautiful. Yes. Thank you.
Wow.
That worked. It did. Okay, I wasn't sure how the crowd was going to move. That's beautiful. That was a pretty raucous room, right? So just to say, we have a lot more roles within us, right, that we might apply to our movement work. Those 3 roles that I just described actually come from someone else, not me. Deepa Iyer has a social change map, and there's a gorgeous list of other roles that we might take on simultaneously to do this change work that we're trying to do. We might be frontline responders, we might be builders, we might be caregivers, right? We might be visionaries, I said that one. We might be experimenters. I think we have to harness all of that energy to get where we're trying to go, right? To take the next steps to harness the people, right?
That's right.
I know we're used to thinking of ourselves as pilot administrators and researchers and policy analysts. That's great, let's do that. Let's continue to do that because we need all of it. My hope is that we might expand so that we can serve that role in addition to more, so that we can channel the roles that our souls tell us are needed to do this really important work. Maybe, yes, I'm wondering, maybe our organizing can center caregiving. Maybe our pilot administrators can be disruptors. Maybe, right, our researchers can be healers. What would it be like to try on a new role today and tomorrow and with each other as we move forward? Maybe 2023 is the year that we really are a movement. Yes, yeah, let's stomp the feet, clap the hands. We're here, we're segueing into another thing. We have lots of terrific programming happening. In particular, we're gonna segue so you can, art is essential. Did you all know that? That's an important fact, yes. And we have a lot of artists here for good reason, because they are deserving, like everybody else, of a basic income floor. So we're gonna see some beautiful stuff. Springboard for the Arts has traveled all the way from Minnesota. Those are some of my favorite people. So you'll see lots of things from them, from local artists here in Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. Did I miss anything? Probably, but we're gonna segue and then we're gonna do more stuff. Thank you all.